and this is like our first edition. The main purpose is to engage in rich discussions around how landscape architects can play a vital role in addressing some of the pressing issues that we have: climate change, urban health, and that really is the mission of this webinar. So thank you once again for joining, and I hope this becomes a enriching discussion ahead. I would like to introduce you to Joy, who is our moderator. So Joy Mutai, she's the Associate Coordination Officer at UN-Habitat, and she will be moderating the session and introducing the panelists to you all. So over to you, Joy. And yes, hoping for a very, very enriching discussion.
Thank you very much, Anu. I'm really glad and honored that the International Federation of Landscape Architects invited me to moderate this session as a landscape architect myself. So particularly, we are going to focus on landscape architecture and how it's leading climate action, particularly looking at nature-based solutions for a regenerative future. So we all know that as landscape architects, everyone are uniquely positioned when it comes to leading climate action, because there is that expertise that exists in terms of integrating natural systems and the built environment. As designers, that interlinkages with nature-based solutions and implementing nature-based solutions in both urban and rural settings are seen as a way of not only mitigating climate action, but particularly focusing on community well-being. So this webinar particularly will focus on how we, as landscape architects, are pioneering regenerative approaches that go well beyond sustainability to actively heal and strengthen our environment while building climate resilience community. That's why we have a fantastic set of panelists that are set out today, who are going to bring in their own expertise and their own wealth of experience when it comes to implementation of nature-based solutions. With that, without further ado, just like to highlight, we only have an hour, and as Anu has mentioned, we will be taking questions and answers at the end. So if you could, as speakers are going through their presentation, if you could kindly place them in the chat box, and we will be addressing them at the end. So without further ado, I'll introduce all the speakers, and then I'll bring in the first speaker to come on board. Just as a reminder, all speakers, you have 5 to 7 minutes for your intervention. And please keep to the time, as we only have an hour. So the first speaker will be Kongjiang Yoon, who's the founder and principal designer at Turenscape. And then followed by Gunara Roll, who's the head of Cities Unit, United Nations Environment Program, followed by Naomi Hugavost, who's the program manager officer at the Planning, Finance and Economy section of UN-Habitat, the United Nations Human Settlements Program, and also an urban lab coordinator. The last two speakers will be Steffi Schupal. Steffi is an international relations she's an international relations officer at the Federation of German Landscape Architects and director at Cateneo Schupal. And Indra Paz. Indra is also a chair for the professional practice and policy of the International Federation of Landscape Architects. So as we start, I'd like to bring in the first speaker, Kongjiang Yu. Just like to highlight that the full bios of all the speakers will be shared at the end of the webinar as part of the package. Please look out into that. So Kongjiang Yu, if you could kindly start sharing your screen. You have had a lot of experience when it comes to the sponge cities concept, and it has gained significant attention in terms of its innovative approaches to urban resilience and water management. Could you share some examples of successful implementation and their measurable impact, but also what are the biggest obstacles to adopting these concepts in cities particularly, and how important is participatory approaches when it comes to designing concept cities? Over to you, Kongjiang.
Hi, so you can see my slides?
Yes.
Thank you, Joy. Particularly you are representing UN-Habitat. And so I'm talking about sponge city and beyond the city, but the sponge planet as a holistic nature-based solution And it is land-based, by the way, land-based water-driven solution. We all know the problems of all these climate change, sea level rising. A conventional solution about adaptation is we use all this great infrastructure, keep investing, but they keep fail. And not only fail, they actually worsening climate issues here because the emission of carbon emissions based on use concrete, 8% of carbon emission actually come from carbon from concrete. And why this great infrastructure fail? When you look at this precipitation pattern, when we look at this great infrastructure was invented in European countries and see how constant climate it is every month precipitation. But when I come back to China or other developing countries, especially India, China, Jakarta, Bangkok, you will see we have totally different precipitation pattern, which means we have a monsoon or monsoon-like climate. That's the reason all the cities almost fail due to climate change and even monsoon climate itself. And beyond that, the sea level rising caused not only by ice cap melting and the thermal expansion of the ocean water, but there's a bad management of water. 40% of sea level rising actually come from some bad management of water on the land, the depletion of groundwater and the runoff of flood. So the solution is what I call sponge planet. It's an extension of sponge city, all the way from sponge catchment, sponge waterway, sponge farm, sponge towns. The three principles is to retain water, slow down water, and embrace water at the end, from source to process to the sink. And actually, we should back to be inspired by the traditional knowledge of this monsoon culture, I call it, by scientificizing the traditional knowledge and develop modern solutions to create a modular approach, such as terracing, ponding, islanding. And all these solutions actually are based on the agricultural and monsoon experience. I just want to show you three examples about how these three principles, which are totally opposite to conventional solution. First one is to retain water instead of drain away water. Now this is in monsoon region in Sanya, terracing, ponding, islanding. We create this sponge park right in the middle of the city and take only 1 year to create such a resilient urban city center in the monsoon region. Now that's before and this is after. And this have been almost 10 years and experience huge storm. You can see how it perform. That's before and after. Virtually solves the problem at a very low cost. And the slow down the process, which means we need to demolish or we need to get rid of all this gray infrastructure, which been widely used in all countries, particularly in the developing countries, in India, in Mexico, in China. And these are experiments. You can see how we actually remove concrete and cover the habitat and had multiple benefits, including stormwater management, including cleaning of water, including the biodiversity recovery into the city, and certainly provide a habitat for people, for the people to use it. And at the end, when water accumulate, we need to adapt, we need to embrace water instead of building walls to fight against water. Now, this is our original case in the about seawall. Is a new city in Hainan, Haikou in China, in South China. And there was a wall here, and we're going to build a new city. Now, our solution is not just actually, we totally get rid of this wall and create a horizontal wall. Now, why is that? Because a gray concrete wall not only causes a loss of biodiversity and habitat degradation, but also enforce erosion. So we create a landscape, nature-based seawall to solve the problem. Now, this was before, and this is actually after. You can see the dramatic change. This today, you will see a totally different solution against sea level rising and ocean surge. And this is on the construction of the whole city. You can see the front. That's a test this year. We have a huge test. We have a huge typhoon, the Yagi typhoon 2024. That's the former one. You can see it was the other section of the conventional seawall, and the lower side, the lower picture is what our nature-based seawall that more resilient. So the whole idea is that how can we holistically use nature-based solution to solve climate mitigation, climate adaptation, and also the change of the human habitat. That's my point. It's a holistic, land-based, not only nature-based as a broad sense, but a land-based and water-driven, carbon-based mitigation is not only too late, but also will not solve the problem holistically. We have to have this solution, land-based, water-driven. Now that's basically landscape. Now that's why I think landscape will in the future will play a key role here to solve the problem of climate change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Konjiang. You really highlighted some of the, cases that can show impact of implementing nature-based solutions, and I really appreciate the fact that you're bringing in a more holistic approach when it comes to implementing nature-based solutions. As you have mentioned, it needs to be holistic, it needs to be land-based, and it needs to look at what water-driven approaches to climate action. I will follow up with a very quick question just to you. I know you were right on time, so I'm giving you a half a minute to respond to this. How has community participation been a key part of implementing the sponge cities? You are muted.
So yes, we not only communicate, we have to revolutionize people's mentality that number one, when we talk about climate change, we should not only carbon should think about how the global surface change, the land-based water change, and I said communication is about change of mentality, education of policymaker, and education of expertise, conventional experts in this in engineering field, and certainly we need a totally young generation which have the mind of holistic solution, nature-based.
Thank you very much. So we need to really empower our young people, educate them on the importance of nature-based solutions as cities are continuously growing. Thank you for that intervention. I'll move very quickly to the next speaker, Gulnara Roll. Gulnara, would like to hear from your side and from UNEP's perspective, what are the most pressing environmental challenges faced by cities today, and how can landscape architects address this? And particularly, you can also look at how landscape architecture collaboration with the United Nations Environment Programme can support climate change mitigation and adaptation, particularly in the context of the new urban agenda. Over to you, Gulnara.
Thank you so much, Joy, and dear colleagues. I'm so happy to be again with International Federation and Architects. We met in Istanbul. There was like very exciting discussion. So it's really a pleasure again to reconnect and continue working together. United Nations Environment Programme, and I think the specific thing about UNEP is, with UN-Habitat, we have headquarters in Nairobi both, so we're kind of very much sister agencies, working together on many projects. So UNEP is focusing really on the triple planetary crisis, and this is where we see really, I will share my slides. This is where we see that the landscape architects can help a lot, because any problem has to be addressed in its integrity. So environmental pollution, biodiversity loss and climate change need to be really looked together. And I think in the previous presentation of the Sponge City, it really also was one of the greatest examples how it could be done. So the nature-based solutions that landscape architecture is looking at, really, I think it's really a transformative approach how we can actually address this. So looking into this kind of very integrated approach into addressing environment and climate change challenges, the specific most pressing environmental issues that landscape architects can address through their very important work is definitely addressing heat islands. We know that cities, because of the densities, experiences the high temperatures, because they have limited vegetation. We see, for instance, cities where they lose the forest cover, they get extreme heat situation. And actually, extreme heat is now very under focus of the Secretary General's team. You probably saw the call for action by the United Nations Secretary General, as this is where UN agencies all together are aligning to work together. Interconnected issues is air and water pollution, and we already saw some of the studies where the cities, through the integrated climate action plans, are dealing together with extreme heat and air pollution, for instance, and biodiversity loss. So biodiversity loss definitely is another topic, and this is where looking through the you don't see the slides?
No, actually, we don't see the slides. Oh, it's coming now.
Now?
Yes. Yes, now we have
Right.
it.
Oh, thank you so much for letting me know. So I think that you can choose a list of these key environmental issues that we think are most important: the heat island, air pollution, biodiversity loss, flood, and sea level rise. Definitely, this is all the topics are very important that landscape architects can address through their work. And at UNEP, we have several very innovative projects. For instance, generation restoration with 25 cities. We're looking in the very specific context in the global south, through different nature-based solutions, how you can address actually the different issues on environment and climate change. So to a question, maybe Joy, about how we could work together with IFLA and the landscape architects. Definitely, UNEP is working a lot on the kind of science global level. For instance, we're producing annually emission gap report looking into the gaps in terms of mitigation measures, but also we're also developing adaptation gap reports. These two reports are actually presented at each climate change global conference. So these two annual reports, analysis at global level, they really show how much of the both mitigation adaptation measures need to be done. And this is where landscape architects can do quite a lot. They can really include the nature-based solutions into the urban planning frameworks, developing innovative projects. And I think, Joy, you mentioned also at the very beginning, we should look into the ecosystem health, but we also need to look into the quality of life of the population. And in order to do that, of course, we need to influence the urban development policies. And as we discussed in Istanbul with many of you, is that as IFLA members are really living and working in their countries, they can be really a very important experts to support that process. And this work of the landscape architects can really a very big impact. Just to remind you that we as the United Nations are working to support the 2030 Agenda Sustainable Development. So through our joint work, we can influence the SDGs, the climate change, the SDG 13, SDG 11, Life of Land, SDG 15. And also multiple commitments under different multilateral environmental agreements. So this is just one example. There is a commitment named Global Cooling Pledge, which was launched at COP29 in Dubai. And it also includes a commitment for the local authorities, subnational authorities, where the development of the nature-based solution is one of the commitments of the cities. And this is where definitely under this commitment and other commitment, we can really work very well together. So back to you, Joy.
Thank you very much, Gulnara. Very spot on areas that the landscape architects could actually support on, and addressing this triple planetary crisis that you've highlighted at the beginning, and how nature-based solutions can influence not only at the local level, but also at the global level with science and policy and contribution to the Agenda 2030. Thank you for that, Gulnara. I'll give the floor to the next presenter. We'd like to hear from Naomi Hugavost. From your perspective, Naomi, and from UN-Habitat's perspective, how can the collaboration between IFLA and UN-Habitat influence policy and decision-making processes at all levels, both at local, national, and global levels? And how can we ensure equitable implementation of nature-based solutions? We know that cities are sprawling. We know inequality is increasing. How can nature-based solutions be implemented to ensure that there's equity, particularly for the most vulnerable population? And what are some of the financing models that exist? We are very particular, as we know that at the global level, a very small percentage is given to nature-based solution, particularly in terms of climate adaptation. So over to you, Naomi. If you're sharing your screen as well, just let us know. Hello, Naomi, can you hear us?
Yes, now I can hear you. Great. Now let me see if I manage to share my screen. Give me 1 second and I'll happy to come in. I think it's almost there. Great. I hope this is the one. Let me know if you can see it.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Now, great to come after this great first 2 panelists on sponge cities, and also our colleague from UNEP explaining sort of the key challenges. And thanks, Joy, for the introduction. I'm here to present UN-Habitat's work on nature-based solutions, and also our collaboration actually with the International Federation of Landscape Architects, and how we try to support cities in making them more nature-proof. I will give a short introduction first, and then we'll dive into some questions that we discussed that would be relevant for this this group here today, to talk about how partnerships can help promoting nature-based solutions, especially in urban planning and finance processes. Also talking about equity, how to make sure that we are supporting people need nature most in cities. And lastly, also sort of the finance model. So what do we need to look at? So I'll start a bit with an introduction of what UN-Habitat does, responsible within the UN agencies system to promote transformative change in cities and also human settlements. And we do that through knowledge creation, policy advice, and also technical assistance from national governments to local governments and all the urban stakeholders that are part of these complex processes. So we promote collaborative action. And I'm working at the Planning, Finance and Economy section, working on spatial planning. And we see that transformative planning needs a spatial approach. As you can see on the left, sort of the challenges that cities are facing: urban sprawl, segregation, congestion, degraded ecosystems, and inequalities. And if you can plan more spatially, how can you keep your cities more compact? How you can, instead of segregation, include communities, making sure they have access to infrastructure and services, how to ensure connectivity, proximity, and also urban resilience, I think, where nature-based solution could play a key role. And then lastly, on sort of making sure that cities prosper for all. So here we try to sort of dive deep a bit in those challenges and opportunities. So for example, looking at better effective land use systems, ensuring that infrastructure developments are also spatially identified and connected, making use, looking at synergies, for example. And a key point also is leveraging nature and nature-based solutions to, in the end, have an integrated approach, right? So if we want to make cities more healthy, we need to work with nature for heat reduction, CO2 reductions, also actually a better health and well-being, etc. So here you can see some of the areas of work where we definitely will make a connection later on with IFLA, but we work on planning, finance, and the economy guidelines and tools in different spatial dimensions, so from regional all the way to public spaces. We also align our work to inform policies on national level, but also on global level. We help capacity building on the ground, for example, also creating urban labs on the ground to test what works best in the country or in the cities. Participatory planning is our key part of the process to make sure that there's inclusion and integrated sectorial urban developments. Making use of evidence and data-driven, I think this is something that can be strengthened in the field of nature-based solutions. We come to that later. And effective investments. How can we make sure that investments, especially if you look at the climate finance, how can it end up where most needed in cities? So UN-Habitat's mandate is focusing on cities and human settlements to make them inclusive, safe, and resilient and sustainable. And one of our domains of change in the strategic plan is focusing on climate action and the improved environment where this work falls under. So for example, we integrate nature-based solutions in our planning processes and design. We also have developed and developing guidance on enhanced biodiversity, which is actually during our last UN-Habitat Assembly, through a new resolution, this was a mandate to support our member states and cities with. Policy advocacy is an area that we work on. Capacity building I already mentioned, but these are the areas of work in the field of nature-based solutions. And that's being informed by years of normative work, also again on different levels. So on national level, thematic level, city, public space level. So for example, we have our city plans, which is a toolbox, takes you through the different stages of planning, which cities can use with limited capacities in order to start more participatory processes or including climate and environmental actions in their planning processes. I will point out one more, for example, a publication on designing for displacement in drylands, where we look at nature-based solutions in and spatial planning in context of migration. And on the right side, you also see, so how do we work together with partners on advocacy? So an important partner here, IFLA, but also the Global Observatory of Sustainable Proximities, which brings in this connectivity again, urban shift. Gulnara might have mentioned it too, and some advocacy partnerships focusing also on nature and environment in cities. And this is the publication that we are happy to share, and that's on how to integrate nature-based solutions into urban and territorial planning processes to help with creating action on the ground, also to see how different recommendations can be used in different contexts. And also, again, according to that sort of step-by-step approach, first from a sort of looking at the context, setting the goals and making these spatial assessments, then coming up with plans and ideas for implementation, and also to see how we can actually learn and scale up these kind of solutions. But especially in terms of execution and maintenance, we see quite a role to play with developing new finance mechanisms to prioritize this. And for UN-Habitat, working, should I speed up?
Yes, please do speed up, Naomi.
Okay. Okay, I'll do so. But just to to continue in working on the ground together with cities and urban stakeholders really helps us to inform normative guidance and also policy actions needed. But maybe very important, we were happy to sign in May the collaboration with IFLA to strengthen the partnership in the areas that have been outlined here. It was celebrated at WOOF. And one of the first things is developing joint guidelines, coming up with sort of what are our definitions and frameworks and approaches that we can harmonize and promote together. We would like to look for the development of guidance for nature-based solutions integrated in planning and policy. I'm now going through all the 7 points that we are planning to work on. Provide institutional and regulatory frameworks that is needed to accelerate NPS development. Here you can see 2 examples where in Kenya we, with a sort of nature-based solution approach and a city development approach in settlements where refugees and host communities are struggling for the same resources, is something actually that also by participatory planning brings those groups together and make them more resilient for the droughts and actually the floodings that are happening in those drylands. And also a lot of work we've already done together with IFLA in several COPs, the climate COPs, and also the one on desertification, on how to promote nature-based solutions, for example, in public spaces or in our planning processes. And lastly, we would also like to make use of the different networks that are already there, building networks of experts on nature-based solutions, also to advocate it in other networks that we have, such as on public spaces. And then maybe quickly going through the topic of equity, I think the distribution, the equal or equitable distribution of blue and green networks is something that we're planning on city level in different contexts. So here you can see from a mountainous area in Korok and Tajikistan, where we worked together with communities to develop more resilience, and looking at their quite challenging landscapes in the valleys, and improving from a sort of system approach. Then lastly, on capacity development, also empowering communities in asking the right questions, to understand what are their needs, what are their vulnerabilities through different tools that we have, and also to make sure that action can be done also on local level. These are my last 2 points. I'm hurrying a bit. But financing of nature-based solutions sees a lot of challenges. As you can see on the right, there's also only a limited portion of funding going into nature-based solutions, while actually cities need to invest in order to become more sustainable and resilient in the coming future. And what kind of models can be used for that? What kind of funding is something that we're analyzing and working towards. So you can see on the left, for example, in climate finance, a huge private sector capital is coming in, while nature-based solution is still lacking that. And of course, we know certain issues, why it's not yet there, but that's something that we would like to see how we can work together with IFLA, with UNEP, to see what kind of financial models can be applied in accelerating nature-based solutions implementation, overcoming challenges such as risk assessment, long-term engagement, making sure there are sort of models to ensure sort of return on investment and continuous capacities of cities with their own source revenues to finance the maintenance and of these solutions that in the end will create more engagement of communities and also more resilient cities. Sorry, I had to rush a bit, but I hope this gives a bit of an overview of what UN-Habitat is doing and the 7 points of action that we are planning to undertake with IFLA, and looking forward also to hear from you. Thanks.
Thank you, Naomi. Thank you for that. Even the introduction on how we can translate these urban challenges into sustainable urban development. And these 7 action points are something that we look forward to implementing together with IFLA. I think you've also highlighted something about financing and equity and how to diversify the financial strategy when it comes to implementation of nature-based solutions from on-source revenue to blended finance to private sector. So I'd like to thank you very much for that. I'll give the floor right to the next 2 speakers. This is our last speakers, and I would like to encourage participants to please post your questions in the chat box. We'll be addressing them after these 2 presentations, after these last 2 presentations shared by 2 people. So the next presenters are Steffi Schupel and Indra Paz. I would like to, from the discussions that have happened, we have seen the issues around climate and biodiversity that are currently facing our cities. As landscape architects, we are more than ever important in addressing these challenges. So one of the questions would be, what can be done? What can be done to maximize the visibility of landscape architecture? Over to you, Steffi and Indra.
Yes, hello everyone. It's a really honor to meet all of you and speak with such a great and large audience. So really thank you for a large number of participants. So it shows also an interest. And I believe, Steffi, you can already start to share slides so we can move on. And we was, for this year, 5 delegates for IFLA. From IFLA represented in COP29 in Azerbaijan, in Baku. In person on site, we was me, Steffi, and coach and Pamela from Thailand, Pamela Conrad from America, and in online it was Nadine Bitar, so from Dubai. So for me, it was the first COP, and I will speak more informally to you because I believe it's also for landscape architects, there is a need to demystify COP and what does it mean. So this is a conference of parties. It takes annually, and as you see, it was the 29th COP last year, and it will be 30 COP next year. So the question is, how can we participate in this COP movement? And I loved it. I honestly will share like this in a very simple way. I believe it was the most from all conferences I participated. Sorry, Gulnara, and sorry, Naomi, I haven't participated in UN-Habitat yet. But so I loved it. I loved that it was there was like several parallel like general parallel events. So one of part was that all countries was participating in negotiations. So this is more political, and let's keep that a bit separately. But I will dive more into in that there is a 2 weeks. The event is happening 2 weeks, and this is a 2 weeks conference discussions, innovations, sharing in country and United Nations institutions pavilions. So can you imagine that how much like innovations and exchange could be done and shared during 2 weeks of events on a certain diverse topics. On these country pavilions and United Nations institutions pavilions, and probably there are more typology of pavilions. There was entrepreneurs, scientists, policy experts, professionals, politicians, and all of them under one topic, climate with a bigger umbrella, but then several subtopics, food, biodiversity, energy, finance. So every day has kind of separate angle, and every country pavilion had its separate angle. So even I came with quite a feeling of competence in seen climate change from perspective of landscape architect and competence in biodiversity, microclimate. Even I felt this really overwhelming information, really inspiring information of new innovations I can adapt in landscape architecture professional work. And I would encourage you, as you can see here in the slides, Baku was the second largest COP after previous year, Dubai, which was like 80,000, but I believe approximately. So there is 54,000 in person and 2,500 online. So technically any of you, I think we can discuss how it's technically done, but there is possibility to join online, but it's also possible if some procedure is not accepted in this way, you can follow country pavilions. So most of them are online. So you can be participated in this format and follow the COP. So the next event will be in this year in November. I don't sure this is the right logo yet. It was somewhere around in the internet, but the topic approved is Amazonia, and it will be in Belém, so in Brazil, and IFLA will participate also in this event. So for landscape architects, I believe as a creative discipline, as a creative industry, this is exactly how we can support by reimagining futures, innovate futures. We can resystemize by knowledge, by really knowing what's in this puzzle, what in this system, resystemize. It was really greatly showed by Kong Jian examples like case studies, how we can resystemize these landscapes, deconstruct and make them totally new, innovative, and absolutely in a new harmony, so it could work and support the planet in a better way. But this asks for a knowledge for really diverse disciplines which were there all together in COP. So what additionally, I would say, I think we can move for the next slides, and Steffi could a bit share, and then, yeah.
Thank you, Indra. Over to you, Steffi, and then I can summarize.
Steffi, you are muted.
Okay, yes, sorry, I had a full screen presentation, so I didn't find the unmute button. Hello, everyone, and also thanks again for having me in this panel discussion. It's a true honor to be in between all these panelists. So I would like to share with you a bit from my experience, first time at a COP, and the ideas that we have now as IFLA, where we can actually start. So what are actually the levels where we can contribute in the context of COP? Obviously, as it is an international conference, there is the international level. So the first idea how we can relate and how we can contribute is that IFLA has got an impact on the international level. But if you see the complexity of a COP, it is not that easy. So we had to figure out first, who do we address? How can we express our opinions, and how can we be more visible? So the point where to start from on the international level is the so-called constituency. And I'll share with you this, which is comes from the UNFCCC Observer Handbook for the COP29, and it's the structure of the constituencies of the observer organizations. So all the organizations which are as observers in the process of the COP, besides the parties which are actually negotiating. And so at the moment, IFLA is in the environmental NGOs COP constituency, sorry. And we've been, as was our first COP, we've been seeing, like, also exploring if that is the right place for us to be. And we've been looking at other constituencies and how they work. So basically, the constituency is the unit in which you can express your opinion, and you can actually bring in your knowledge, and that ends up also on the negotiation table, as the constituencies have also representatives in the negotiation. So the next step for IFLA will be to find the right constituency where we can have the most impact, and start to team up with our colleagues there and contribute on that level. The next level is the international level. I had the chance, as Indra was also explaining, to see a bit in the country pavilions. And so I was also often talking to the people in the German pavilion, as I'm from Germany. And I had the chance to speak also to some of the negotiators. And the finding of this was that actually, as landscape architects, we should also bring our issues to our national ministries, which are responsible for the COP negotiations, because this is the way to be heard. So in Germany, it works in a way that the ministries which are working on their positions for the COP negotiations have also a way to participate, to actively involve the public in a sort of participation process. So that would be the point to step in, and then there we could bring in our content. In Europe, we have a bit of a special case because the European countries are speaking with one voice at the COP. So basically, once the ministries, which is probably even more than one ministry in Germany, it's the environment, the foreign affairs, and the climate, which they make their own positions, then they talk to each other, make a common position as a country, and then all the European countries speak together and discuss the position of the European Union, and that is brought in the negotiations. So on these levels, wherever you have the chance, be there as a landscape architect, explain what you do, bring examples, point out the importance of what we are doing. So this is probably the best way, and we will also help with that as IFLA, because it is important in order to amplify the landscape architect's impact, to have a coordinated messaging. So the message that we bring on all the levels should be the same, from our national ministries to the EU level, and also to the global COP engagement. And how can we get involved in other ways? Like Indra mentioned, there is this huge set of side events which are accompanying the COP. So I think that this is also a very, very good opportunity to build strategic alliances with like-minded organizations like we have here on the panel, UNEP or UN-Habitat, or also other international organizations, or also let's so-called sister associations like ISOCARP, for example. And another way would be also to actively participate in these COP side events. So if there are panel discussions, presentations, we try to be there as landscape architects and bring in our perspective and make it known to the public, or to all these participants which are there listening. And I think also another important point is to just leverage COP's unique networking platform, because we need to forge these partnerships and collaborations to make the profession stronger and to be heard more. So I think, to sum it up, it's just that we have to really actively be there and not just, go and listen and consume, but we just have to speak out and bring in our position. And with that, I would hand over again to Indra for the final words.
Yes, you can keep it here, like back in the back slide. I will finalize this one because I was represented by IFLA. I represented IFLA, but I was in all the period in contact with our national delegation for COP29. I have had the meetings with the minister on climate. I had the meetings with embassy in Azerbaijan. So I participated quite actively with them and shared the knowledge about landscape architecture. And we also agreed on further meetings regarding national adaptation plans and how can we support the knowledge for a ministry and share this. So this is a really collaboration possibilities. And because both parties, all of us need a change, and we need an information. So I also encourage you to follow COP calls. There will be upcoming calls for COP on this country level. So you need to invest in search what are represented ministry or persons for COP 30, and then follow what are possibilities to be part of it. I believe on a national level there is innovations. You are participating in them, or some research, like a larger scale research on landscape architecture issues or landscape planning issues. So encourage colleagues to participate, to present, and to be part of it. So this is really a possibility, and we are very welcomed. And so next slide, please. And one of the quite also easy and visible way how to communicate, and how it was done in last year COP, was by publications. So curated by Pamela and Coach, and together with IFLA Climate Change Working Group, it was developed publication, Work with Nature. But during COP we were speaking that it's not about nature-based solutions. It's let's change this together for a landscape-based solutions, because applies this UNESCO recommendation principle on landscape approach, more integrated, more like a holistic approach. So you can follow this publication, like there is a link and also the QR code. Please share next slide. And so this is the case studies collected. The case studies what we as IFLA and also Climate Change Working Group and together with ASLA and other organizations developed, but also the previous speaker shares that we can collaborate in a common studies, common case studies together. So thank you so far, and please be involved, proactive. Thank you.
Thank you, Indra and Steffi, for that elaborate presentation on how landscape architects can create an impact, not only by creating strategic alliances, by going through and going in these international conferences and being part of the discussions. So far, there are some questions that have come up on the chat, a few questions actually that I would like a very quick round of answers from the different speakers. The first one is in regards to planning guidelines framework and how that is disconnected from actual implementation on the ground. So how can we address that issue, and who's actually responsible for implementation? So that would be the first question that if anyone would like to take it up as panelists, otherwise we can take a round for that. And the second question has really been, how can we look at how can we look at an integrated approach? Because when it looks at nature-based solutions, it can be seen in urban planning, it can be seen in urban design programs. How can we address this? And also as landscape architects, how can we address this disconnect in terms of implementation of nature-based solutions between different professions? I think we'll take those two questions for now. If there are any new, additional questions, we can address them after. So whoever is ready to answer the first one in terms of guidelines and implementation and the integrated approaches.
I'm happy to come in on the first question on the guidelines and sort of the disconnect, and the question, are international organizations responsible for this? In the end, I think we see that nature needs a multi-level governance. Different stakeholders can play a role, but cities that we are working with, or communities, they also need to play a role. Most of the people live there. There are a lot of vulnerable communities there, but also contributing maybe to the pollution and the climate change. So as an example, we work on water and cities. Water is a common good, and it's actually a water system, as you know more or better, that is sort of a cycle on our planet, but how to trickle it down to implementation on the ground is something that we are working with many stakeholders. So on global level, we would like to advocate in the climate discussion how to integrate, for example, water solutions in their determined contributions or their national adaptation plan, so we can support countries on doing that. It's not that we are doing it, but we're helping and in the end, on urban level, where the impact is undertaken, is something where we support cities in coming up with integrated solutions and how to leverage water for the issues that they're facing. For example, the pollution of the lake that they're living in, the rapid urbanization that's actually removing all the nature, which actually is bringing in more heat or flood risk. So we are working on all these levels to support, in the end, cities with making them more resilient. And we work with landscape architects in these processes. And I think in the global and in the national processes, we can work more. And I think that's why we have set up this collaboration. We want to have landscape architects informing planning guidelines. But on local level, for example, I work here in Kenya, in Nakuru, there's a landscape consortium, landscape architect consortium team that's actually coming up with systematic solutions for the city to address their blue and green infrastructure opportunities. So yes, landscape architects are needed, also integrated in governments, but that's something that we hope to support and making that key point. If we want to become more resilient for extreme weather events, sea level rise, all the issues mentioned in the beginning, we need to work together on this. So I'm happy to work together with you on this.
Thanks, Naomi. And actually, your last comment has also addressed another question regarding how landscape architects can actually support designs to ensure that they can support decision-making processes, from the design all the way to implementation of nature-based solutions, and how you can look at the different governance frameworks that exist and who's supposed to be engaged. I don't know if there's someone else who'd like to answer the questions.
I can add, and I would say that I would use this like leave no one behind. We as landscape architects get experience sometimes to be invited, not like last ones in the topic, but I believe so we have experienced how it feels and how it might went to not the correct directions. And so I would encourage us to say that these are times of collaboration and times that everyone is joining, that we are aware of professionals, of societies, and bring all forces together to our common goals.
Thank you, Indra. And particularly also focusing on how this is taken into university studies, how urban planners, landscape architects, but also urban designers are being taught on the importance of nature-based solutions and the importance of collaboration between the different professions in terms of implementation. Thanks for that. Yes, Gulnara?
Well, I think just to add on this multi-level governance, don't forget that there is also multilateral environmental agreements like a convention on biodiversity, and I think what colleagues already were speaking about, the Paris Agreement, and I think we have like over 200 different environmental agreements. At UNEP, we have also the major groups like NGOs, local governments, who are very active, and we're really working as a cities unit at UNEP. We're really trying to work to ensure that the stakeholders actually actively engaged in implementation of these multilateral environmental agreements. So I think this would be really a good way for landscape architects engage. I mean, as already was presented through climate COP, but also biodiversity COP, and UNEP has actually the institutional architecture to engage you. So happy to maybe already offline to explain a bit more about the major group cooperation, how they're engaged. Also, we have like for use separately, for instance. And we all believe in the importance of the local implementation of this global environmental agreements. So we can do quite a lot through our cooperation to implement them and to achieve environmental climate goals.
Thanks, Gulnara, and also Steffi and Indra had already also mentioned how to engage with the organizations such as UNEP to ensure that they can influence decision making and negotiations during these agreements. I don't know if there's any other panelists who'd like to jump in. I would like to ask one round of questions as the focus today was on looking at future cities. One of the things, future generative cities through nature-based solutions, one of the questions that has come out, and I think this is something that can be highlighted by all the speakers, is how do we envision the cities of 2050? I think we can also envision beyond 2050. What are the steps that we should take? So if you could just sum that up in half a minute each of you, and then we can wrap up the session.
Okay.
Yes.
Well,
Over to you, Kong Jian.
okay, how to envision the future cities. First of all, climate change, we think is not is something we have to make use of it. It's a good opportunity for branding, for rebranding landscape architecture. So profession of landscape architecture being misunderstood, widely being misunderstood, based on our traditional thinking about landscape is make something beautiful. But actually landscape is an art of survival. It is a core of nature-based solution. And we have so many problems here, and they are badly solved. For example, adaptation, flood, fire. We keep investing huge amount of money to try to build a flood wall, to build concrete, to build dams, to enforce a pipe system, and they keep failing. Because we think that's not landscape architecture's work, that's a civil engineer's work. So we have to have branding landscape architecture as a holistic, including civil engineering, right? Including environmental solutions. That's why we need the communication to make the rebrand landscape architecture as an art and engineering of survival. So that's my point. That's very important.
Thank you. So we envision cities that have accepted and are working with climate and working with landscape architects to rebrand and create impact. Thanks for that, Kong Jiang. Any other person who would like to jump in?
I'd like to
Steffi?
contribute.
Yes.
Yes. I'd like to connect to what Indra said before, to leave no one behind. And in that sense, I would like to encourage to have a good share of participation in our projects, so that we can make sure that all the vulnerable communities are there, everybody is heard, the young people, the elderly people, the minorities. So everybody shares the landscape and shares the cities of the future. So I think we should just be very aware of that everybody has a word, and we should make all the efforts to involve all the people.
Thanks, Steffi. Any other panelists who would like to jump in?
I can jump, and I would encourage us to be brave, but be brave in feminine way, and with a loving, caring, empathetic way to the planet, to the humans, and through this delicacy of femininity, and I believe we can achieve a lot.
Thanks, Indra. Brave, empathy, looking at participation from Steffi. Naomi, Gulnara, any additional points from your side? Yes.
I leave the finals to Gulnara. No, thanks. It's nice to build on something that the caring, the empathetic city, that's definitely what I see. But I hope to also see cities in the future that are actually contributing to nature. We have to do a lot of work. So everyone can value again the power of nature, the connection that we have. There will, I hope not, that there will be a tipping point where that will change, but we have to start preparing the work now in order to make sure that we first recover resources, but then start to actually contribute. I think we can do it.
Yes, I believe we can, Naomi. Thanks for that. Prepare for the cities, for the future cities. Gulnara.
Well, I really liked the last comment, especially Kongjian Yu. I think really this is brilliant comment. But everything will cost money, right? If we are moving towards 2050, it will be huge costs to achieve kind of this city of the future. So we really need to think about technologies, artificial intelligence, digitalization. So we should think about that, how we can use them to make it all these adaptation mitigation measures cost efficient. And I think what already was like one of the important points, not leaving anybody behind. Of course, we need to make sure that we have like social solidarity, territorial solidarity in the cities. It all comes on the cost. And don't, one of the topics that we're speaking a lot now about decommissioning of the big infrastructures, which with the new realities don't work anymore. Again, it requires the investments. So the integration of different measures, technologies, they will be all necessary, and also kind of innovative financial instruments, they will be all necessary as tools to achieve, the beautiful cities of the future. So just to remind, this is the topics maybe perhaps for the next webinars.
Yes, thanks, Gulnara. Also been highlighted on the chat around financing and the need to get more information around financing nature-based solutions. So quite important, how do we ensure that we can cost and finance when we are embracing climate, when we are thinking about leaving no one behind, or when you're being empathetic with the approaches that we are taking and preparing for the future, how can we invest and put financing into this, both at the different scales. So I'd like to conclude this session here. I'd like to thank very much the panelists for your thoughts. This was quite interesting. We've learned a lot around different ways of engaging as landscape architects, how we can brace ourselves for the future, and how we can become, as Kongjun had mentioned, landscape is the art of living, surviving. So how can we ensure that landscape architects are at the forefront in addressing these issues that are faced by cities of today? With that, I'd like to give the floor back to Anu for the concluding remarks. Thanks very much.
Thank you everyone for joining in, and I really want to thank and also announce that we have scheduled our next webinar for February 18 around this time, and more details will be up on our social media and on our website. And let's continue these discussions, and thank you once again for joining in. And if you have any questions, I'll leave my email address. You can reach out to me. I'll be happy to answer and connect.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.
Thank
Good to see you
you.
all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Indra, bye, Steffi.